You spend weeks mastering the material. You sit down in the exam room, and looking at the first question, your mind goes completely blank. That sudden cognitive freeze is incredibly common, and it has nothing to do with a lack of preparation or a failure of willpower. Your brain is actively being hijacked by its own defense mechanisms. When facing an academic threat, a sensory signal shoots straight to the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. This 12-millisecond shortcut bypasses the prefrontal cortex, where logical thought happens. This biological speedway triggers a massive adrenaline dump before you even consciously process what you're seeing. Those stress hormones kick your autonomic nervous system into high gear. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing shallows out, and your hands start to tremble. By the time your rational mind catches up and realizes you are anxious, your body is already locked into a vicious feedback loop. The physical symptoms signal to your brain that you are in physical danger, which generates more panic, trapping you in survival mode. While adrenaline acts instantly, a second chemical wave follows right behind it. About 20 to 30 minutes after that initial trigger, your brain is flooded with cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. To understand what cortisol does to you in that moment, we have to separate memory into two distinct phases: encoding, the act of learning the material, and retrieval, pulling it back up on demand. Cortisol targets the hippocampus, the brain's memory retrieval center, creating a chemical barrier that blocks access to encoded information. Simultaneously, worried thoughts hijack your working memory. With processing power consumed by the threat, you have zero cognitive resources left to execute the task. This creates a frustrating paradox for highly driven, perfectionist individuals. Because they hold such exacting standards for themselves, their brains misclassify academic or professional evaluations as literal life or death threats. This situational reaction, often called performance anxiety, is highly context-specific. It is clinically distinct from panic disorder, where intense autonomic surges happen unexpectedly, without external triggers. Your mind does not go blank because you lack knowledge. It goes blank because your brain has actively suspended executive function to prioritize immediate survival. A temporary block during an exam is frustrating, but when the threat response fails to shut off, the damage scales up from acute minutes to chronic months. When diffuse, uncontrollable worry persists, a clinician might look toward generalized anxiety disorder. Notice the specific diagnostic criteria here. The excessive anxiety and physical markers, like restlessness, fatigue, and muscle tension, must occur for more days than not over a period of at least 6 months. Sustaining high cortisol actually causes the hippocampus to undergo atrophy. Your memory center physically shrinks and loses neural density. Simultaneously, chronic stress prunes synaptic connections in your prefrontal cortex, weakening your logical control center, while leaving your amygdala hyperactive and overly sensitive. Chronic anxiety causes measurable architectural remodeling of the brain. It physically degrades the neural pathways you rely on to regulate your own emotions. Because we now understand the precise biological timeline of this cascade, we know exactly where and how to intercept it. For acute situational performance anxiety, physicians often prescribe beta blockers like propranolol as a targeted short-term medical intervention. Beta blockers bind to peripheral adrenaline receptors, stopping physical panic symptoms in the chest and limbs without sedating the brain. Silencing the racing heart and trembling hands severs the mind-body feedback loop. Without these physical alarms, the brain registers the environment as safe. For long-term recovery from chronic or severe test anxiety, the clinical gold standard is cognitive behavioral therapy, specifically through structured exposure. By repeatedly and safely facing the exact situations that trigger panic, exposure therapy facilitates habituation and extinction. This process actively rebuilds synaptic strength in the prefrontal cortex, restoring your logical brain's ability to exert top-down control over a hyperactive amygdala. Experiencing debilitating anxiety doesn't mean you lack competence. It means your body is executing a flawless survival protocol in the wrong environment. By understanding the biology of the cascade, you can finally take the steering wheel back from your amygdala.